That's Nick.
And that's Joseph. And today we're here to talk about Drive Away Dolls, which is the 19th feature, technically directed by Ethan Coen, but his first narrative feature by himself, solo, which is being released courtesy of Focus Features on February 23rd, 2024.
So he's part of the Coen brothers.
Yes, and you've seen many Coen brothers films.
Like Fargo.
Mm-hmm.
And what else?
Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? No Country for Old Men, The Man Who Wasn't There.
Okay. Well, what is this movie about? Jamie regrets her breakup with her girlfriend while Marian needs to relax. In search of a fresh start, they embark on an unexpected road trip to Tallahassee. Things quickly go awry when they cross paths with a group of inept criminals. What's your pull quote?
A goofily ribald screwball comedy which feels like a Gen X lesbian road trip heist film written by aliens.
Ugh, mine. Short on laughs and loaded with audio pornography, Drive Away Dolls' absurdity may appeal to those simply hungry for any lesbian content, but I wasn't feeling it.
I think absurd is definitely a good word for this film.
I don't know where the jokes are. I don't know what's funny about this movie.
They aren't really there, but there's some interesting Coen Brothers-esque ticks going on, particularly with women from a certain part of the country utilizing an exaggerated accent, because of course I thought of Frances McDormand in Fargo. But if you're trying to relate this to any of the Coen brothers' actual films, it's very Hudsucker Proxy in the Jennifer Jason Leigh character, which was a misfire at the time.
I didn't know who directed this as we were watching it, and when it ended I thought, oh, this feels like if someone tried to make like Fargo like a lesbian like road trip movie in a way. But I like Fargo and I think it's funny. But this, okay.
So and I think it's interesting to note. So the last movie they directed together was The Ballad of Buster Scruggs in 2018, and since then have done other things. But I think it's very telling to see who was interested in what. Because Joel Coen, who's married to Frances McDormand, directed The Tragedy of Macbeth, which I really liked, with Denzel.
Okay.
And then this is Ethan stepping out on his own, who co-wrote this with his wife Trisha Cook, who also edited it.
I wonder how many lesbians were involved in the making of this movie, because it's not hitting for me. The time period, it's set in 1999.
Philly.
Which we'll get to. But the basic story is Jamie, who's played by Margaret Qualley, and Marian, played by...
Geraldine Viswanathan, who we've seen in many things.
Yes. So they're friends. It seems like they're loose friends, but the premise saying they need to make a fresh start, that doesn't really feel accurate. It's just that Marian is taking a little road trip down to Tallahassee, Florida, to visit her very conservative aunt.
To go birding.
To go bird watching. And Jamie has recently been kicked out of her apartment because her girlfriend caught her cheating on her.
Sukie, played by Beanie Feldstein.
So Jamie's like, please let me go with you. Marianne's resistant because Marianne's very like uptight, stuffy, and Jamie is just a balls to the walls, which probably doesn't make sense, lesbian. So Marianne is telling Jamie, like, my aunt's probably not going to like you and you're too much, but ultimately she agrees. And Jamie says, oh, well, there's this place, like this rental car place called Drive Away, where like you don't have to pay for the car because sometimes you can drive they arrange it so like people can drive people's cars to like a long distance destination. So they go to Drive Away, and we see that right before the two ladies walk in, the proprietor named Curlie,
played by Bill Camp,
who might have been my favorite part of the movie, he gets a call. We find out that he was supposed to, he like maybe deals with like some bad guys doing trafficking. So he's told like, oh, the car, like a car needs to go to Tallahassee. And then of course these two ladies walk in saying, we're here and want to go to Tallahassee. So he assumes they are the goons who are supposed to take this car. So as soon as they leave, the real goons show up. And then it becomes a problem. And the two goons are being managed by Colman Domingo. Mm-hmm. So they're concerned because obviously there's something in the car that they're supposed to be transporting. We don't find out what that is until like the third act. But the middle part of the movie just becomes like a very lukewarm cat and mouse game. But really, it's these two ladies are told you need to get to Tallahassee tomorrow, the next day. But Jamie's crazy ass is like, oh no, here's my map. Here are all the like lesbian things we need to do on our way down to Tallahassee. So they get sidetracked. It really is not. It's an adult comedy, and I said audio pornography because Jamie in particular, talks about sex a lot, but they're not doing anything that's that wild and over the top.
No.
I mean, R-rated movies from 15 years ago feel more provocative than this. Even like that another gay movie feels more edgy than this one does. But they end up getting a flat tire while they're driving, and they see what's in the car. It's in the trunk, and they find a briefcase and a box on ice. What's in the box? A decapitated head, which we'll get to.
Okay.
And in the briefcase are a bunch of dildos.
Well, we don't learn that till very late.
We don't. But so why do the goons want this? We find out that Matt Damon is a Florida senator, a very conservative senator, who's considering running for president. Maybe. But in order to do so, of course, has to have like a clean slate, like nothing that anyone can hold over his head. And we find out that when he was younger,
in the 70s,
he hooked up with this woman who was referred to as
Tiffany Plastercaster,
played by Miley Cyrus.
Who shows up very briefly.
Yes.
And in these psychedelic type flashbacks.
Yes, that were probably shot in her like 17th bathroom in her mansion. But this lady would take like casts of like men's erect penises and make dildos out of them. So Matt Damon's concerned that, what is it, damn near 30 years later, that someone might find this dildo and know it's his. So he's paid to have it returned to him. And who was in possession of it? A dildo collector, played by Pedro Pascal, who is killed and decapitated. So that's whose head is in the box. So these two girls have the dildo and the decapitated head. The goons catch up with them, but they end up getting into a fight, and like two of them get killed and the third one runs away. So now the ladies are safe. So what do? Call Matt Damon and say, if you want your dildo back, you need to pay us $1 million. Meet us at the She Shed, a lesbian bar. He shows up with $1 million, gives it to them, takes his stuff. And while the ladies are leaving the lesbian bar, Jamie's ex,
Sukie,
shows up.
With a dog. Like she flew to Tallahassee to give Jamie a dog. Sukie's also a cop. So Matt Damon... A vindictive one.
She's
doing this as punishment, yes.
She's my second favorite thing about the movie. Matt Damon, after he gives them the money, he lingers, and it seems that he planned to get the money back by killing these ladies or robbing them or something. So as he's approaching them with a ski mask on and a gun, Sukie spies him and shoots him. So now it's all like in front page news that Senator Matt Damon was shot while carrying a briefcase of dildos and a decapitated head.
That's one of the best visual gags, because underneath the headline it's him saying, "I can explain."
And then the final scene is Marian finally meets up with her aunt, and we find out that it's probably her biological uncle's wife, because it's a Southern black lady, and Marian is not black. But they get into the car, Jamie, Marian, and the aunt, and Jamie says, "Oh, we can't visit for long. We have to go to Massachusetts." The aunt says, "Why?" And Jamie says, "Oh, that's where two women can get married." The end.
As in Henry James Bostonians. There's a very heavy Henry Jamesian subtext going on in this film, which I was amused by because I really like Henry James. But throughout, Marian is reading the Europeans, and there are many references to that specific text. In fact, this other lesbian calls it a thick book, and that is not one of his thickest. But and it's almost like Coen and his wife were trying to make a kind of a contemporary lesbian period piece update to the 90s.
But
in a strange way, but not really. Not really.
It doesn't. Okay, let's start there. I just don't. I don't understand the 1999 vibe because it's a lesbian road trip movie, and at one point, as the two ladies are entering Florida, Jamie like pulls the car over and sees the billboard of Matt Damon and his family, and she makes a comment like, "Don't get caught as a lesbian after sundown in Florida. Like this is a oppressive place." But they don't receive any resistance. And Jamie is over the top lesbian. We see them stop at this podunk motel and she's talking to the proprietor like, I need to go, where are some lesbian bars? I want to go here, there. And that man is comatose, doesn't even pay attention to them. Okay. Then they check into a much nicer hotel in Florida and Jamie busts out her rainbow visa and is asking the front desk clerk, can I get the LGBT discount? And expecting some resistance. No, the kid's like, oh, well, yeah, we welcome you and really anyone who can pay and you're always getting our best prices. Like, okay, so where's the conflict in that? Like,
but it's also lesbians and not gay men, and I think maybe they're trying to make a joke about how nobody takes lesbians seriously or threatening.
Maybe, but
because there's another scene with the characters played by Joey Slotnick and C.J. Wilson, the henchmen that are trailing them, that are talking to a bunch of lesbians that are talking about their makeout party, and they're like, oh, who are you making out with? Clearly not
recognizing they may be lesbians.
Yeah.
Let me keep going. So the opening of the film is Pedro Pascal, Philadelphia, 1999, sitting in a cafe with a briefcase, clearly nervous. And then he leaves and the server follows him and clearly that person's the one who's trying to collect the briefcase. And they brutally murder him. Mm-hmm. He gets like stabbed in the neck with like a
corkscrew.
A corkscrew on one side and a pin on the other. And then the man gouges Pedro's eyes out. Then we see another man bring a hacksaw to decapitate him. Mm-hmm. So I was expecting something very violent.
Did you like that they made it clear that he was drinking rosé?
Yeah. Well, I assumed he was supposed to be gay and that's why he collects dildos. But from the opening scene, I was expecting something over the top. And this felt, if you take out the expletives, this could be on this could be like a UPN show. Like, it just feels very lukewarm.
It's odd. I don't think it's a successful film, but it is an odd bird all of its own. It is like those 70s conspiracy movies. It's kind of like Dick with Michelle Williams, Little White Michelle Williams, and Kirsten Dunst mixed with something like Kiss Me Deadly. In a way, it's borrowing all these really odd elements and jumbling them up together. And again, I don't know that it's successful, but it's bizarre, for sure.
I don't even know that I would call it bizarre because that would indicate something interesting happened. I mean, there's nothing really memorable. The sex scenes are very mild because the two leads, I mean, they do end up having sex at a point and it's very like discreet looking. Mm-hmm. And then you already mentioned the soccer team of lesbians. They end up going with these soccer players to like a basement party where they're all supposed to hook up. And all it amounts to is they play like musical chairs makeout session. Which all it looks like is a bunch of ladies sitting on each other, kind of kissing delicately. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I just feel like if this would have, I didn't like Bros, but even like Bros felt, or just referencing adult gay comedies, like there were moments in those that felt very specific to that community. I would just be very curious to talk to like a 45-year-old lesbian and see what they think about the movie.
Yeah.
Because it just really doesn't, I'm that age as a gay man. I remember that time and I lived in that region at that time. And the vibe of just feeling uncomfortable and it's not there at all.
No, but yes, it doesn't feel like it's written by lesbians, for sure.
Okay, we have to talk about the actor, one of the goons, Joey Slotnick. We both wrote it down at the same time in the theater. He looks exactly like if you mix Paul Giamatti with J.B. Smoove.
Yep.
And I don't know how I've never recognized him. You know what? I was looking at his IMDb, and I think I probably have seen him in things, and I thought he was Paul Giamatti. Like, oh, Paul got skinny for this movie or something.
Back when he had hair. Well, I think the baldness kind of enhances the JB smoothness
And yeah,
of his
and other
face shape as
features.
well.
Yeah. But he's a joy to look at.
Sure, yeah, those guys were entertaining, and I think that we're supposed to. They're kind of like the male mirrors for the women they're chasing.
Oh, I did not find them entertaining. We get 2 scenes where they're in the car arguing, and that fully felt like filler. And this movie's not even 90 minutes long.
The only place that I think you laughed out loud though was with them when the CJ Wilson with the lesbians, because their arguments are all about how he's the toughie and can't relate to people, and that is making their investigation harder. And that's when it seems like they're getting somewhere, some information from these group of lesbians, and he's like, we have contact with law enforcement.
That was a cute moment, yes. Oh gosh, the Jamie character, Margaret Qualley, I couldn't stand her. I couldn't stand the way she was talking. She talks too much. She even makes a point about like, oh, when I was younger, I was just that loquacious, whatever. And it's like, yeah, girl, you do talk too much about a bunch of bullshit. It's not funny. It reminds me of like when you're with like your conservative family and then you have that one friend, or you're like around friends, coworkers who are maybe not as privy to like your own lifestyle. And you have that one friend who just starts talking nasty, and it's like, really? Right here, right now? Like, what purpose does it serve? And in this movie, I'm thinking, what purpose is this serving? Because it's not comedy.
It's not. Again, it feels very much like the Jennifer Jason Leigh character that the Coen brothers directed her to. The way they directed her in the Hudsucker Proxy is, and this isn't working by a long shot, but there's also a fascinating train wreck quality about Margaret Qualley in this, who I've come to quite like in films like Sanctuary, and something else Stars at Noon. I think she's good at being unhinged, and I think she was very much directed to be this way.
I brought her up because when they get the rental car, the drive-away car, this heifer immediately vandalizes the car by writing in big, very good penmanship on the trunk of the car. She writes, "Love is a sleigh ride to hell." Mm-hmm. Why would you do that? What does this mean?
She also doesn't strike me as somebody that's trying to be in love, because she's got hot drawers.
Right. Then Marianne ends up in jail because she's walking home from the lesbian bar, wherever they are, and a cop pulls her over. I thought that was a really awkward scene because I don't understand why the cop stopped her. We do see her kind of get an attitude with him, and then she says later, oh, I got arrested for like mouthing off to a cop. Mm-hmm. What was, like, I just don't understand, like, I feel like it should have been something about, like, because she's a woman of color, or because they suspected she was a lesbian, which in 1999 wouldn't be grounds to be arrested.
And I think that's seen as in Georgia. Like, yeah, a brown woman in Georgia that is wandering around at night, that can't say where she's been or where she's going to.
And she's mouthy, but it's not like she's being hostile. She just has an attitude. So I just felt like it's not a given that I believe that she would have been arrested for that. And then we just see her in jail. And then that serves the purpose of us getting flashbacks of her as a little girl, maybe like 9 or 8. And we see her bouncing on a trampoline in her backyard. And while she bounces up, she sees her neighbor, this white woman, fully nude, laying by the pool. And I guess then I was confused about Marianne's character, because it almost seems like they're trying to play her as like closeted or not comfortable. But then she doesn't read that way. She's out in these streets being a lesbian. We know that she had a girlfriend that people know about. She's going to the gay bars. She just doesn't like going there because she thinks all people care about is sex. Mm-hmm. So I feel like that character's not written correctly to then take us through her coming out journey. Mm-hmm. Right?
I agree. I think the flashbacks were supposed to allow us to see why she might have this attraction she's repressing to Margaret Qualley, because that woman maybe reminds her of Qualley, and then with the cowboy boots, because Qualley's wearing those.
You're right. Sure. Another thing that I thought was kind of funny but didn't quite work is when the goons go to see the soccer team ladies, they're trying to figure out, like, where did Jamie and Marianne go? And the soccer team gives them some names to some clubs. And they write down Slappies and Ikes. Mm-hmm. So they actually end up going to Slappies, and it turns out to be like a juke joint. Mm-hmm. With this really awkward scene with a black man who they make seem like is unintelligible. Mm-hmm. I found that a little uncomfortable, but the joke is that the soccer team said Slappy and Ike's, but what they probably heard was Saffy's and Dykes, which again is like kind of humorous, but the way it plays out I thought was just awkward. Like, I don't know that the right people wrote this movie.
Sure, but it's funny like how much doesn't really work because the level of references and details in the dialogue I found fascinating because Marian talks about checking into another hotel under the name Abzug after the feminist Betty Abzug, who Bette Midler played in The Glorias, and then the dog that Beanie Feldstein is flying to Tallahassee it's named Alice B. Toklas.
Oh, there are two scenes I really didn't like. One is Jamie and Marianne, staying at the nicer hotel, decide to have a fancy dinner. Don't know how they're paying for it, except also we make mention of Jamie's rainbow visa like 3 times. And then when Marianne says, how are you going to pay for this? Because this is before we learn what's in the briefcase. So I'm thinking there must be money in the briefcase, and that's why they checked into a super fancy hotel. That's why they're balling out at dinner tonight. But then it turns out it isn't money. And then when Marianne says, how are you going to pay? Like, you got to pay your visa back. And Jamie goes, yeah, I suppose. Which I guess is supposed to make her seem irresponsible in addition to having hot draws. Okay.
She is.
But at that fancy dinner, Jamie orders like the nicest bottle of champagne, and while the server is pouring the champagne, she is having like a very sexually explicit conversation with Marianne, basically saying like she wants to have sex with her to break her 3-year dry spell. I just thought that was so uncomfortable in a way that was annoying.
Sure.
Because it wasn't like, what's the gag?
But I've met people and have seen people do things like that.
Yeah,
too,
and those
so.
people are annoying.
Yeah.
So how is this funny? Where is it? What are we doing? Another scene that really annoyed me was when Colman, Domingo, and his 2 goons are like have Jamie and Marianne tied up, and they're trying to figure out like where's the missing dildo, because we find out that they actually took Matt Damon's dildo out of the briefcase because it appears there are like 10 of them. Of different men.
There's like 4. Well,
no, because we see a bunch.
We see a bunch.
Yeah, that's another inconsistency. When they open the briefcase, we only see 4, but at the end we see like 10. Anyway, maybe it had double layers.
Maybe.
But anyway, Jamie's ass pulled Matt Damon's out and used it on herself and left it in the hotel. So now these 2 dummies are tied up. Colman, Domingo, and his 2 goons are there. And what does Colman Domingo do? Fully explain the senator's plight.
Yeah.
Did that make sense? This is supposed to be a secret. Why are you telling these 2 girls, now you have to kill them?
Well, that's the thing. Like, they need this dildo back, but really just free floating out there anywhere, no one would know
who would know.
But that's supposed to be, I think that's what they think is funny.
Oh, God. Maybe I'm not funny.
No.
I don't think that's true.
I don't think that's true either.
We find out that Jamie, she makes a trip to the art supply store so she can buy some plaster of Paris or something, and then she makes a replica of the dildo, 2 of them,
because they like it so much,
so they can use it on each other. I didn't think that was funny. My final, well, then we see that now that these 2 are in love, Jamie has adjusted the graffiti on the car. Also, they say they can keep the car now. Like, okay, that's not how this works. You need to register the shit. But she changes the graffiti to say, love is a sleigh ride, so here goes. So I guess these 2 were in love. They had no chemistry to me.
What was that lesbian movie, The Incredibly True Story of 2 Girls in Love from the late 90s?
I didn't even think Marianne liked Jamie up until the movie ended. So I don't know why they're getting married now.
Married. That's another thing. This is 1999, and gay marriage wasn't legal until 2003 in Massachusetts.
And I immediately thought that because we got married in Massachusetts, and I remember choosing Massachusetts over Iowa because I thought, oh, Massachusetts has been doing it for 6 years.
I don't want any hiccups.
So there won't be any hiccups. So the fact that this movie is saying that it's 1999 when, I don't know.
Yeah, that's odd. Also, what's weird about that scene is we're doing it for a reaction from this conservative black woman, right?
Right, the aunt.
And she's just like, this should have been to me like that final moment in Some Like It Hot when Jack Lemmon reveals to his suitor that he's a man. And that man says, nobody's perfect.
Right. Something, but the way the aunt responds, she says something to the effect of like, well, I guess there's
a place for everything.
Like a place or a time or something for, it had no impact. And then they just drive off.
Exactly, yeah. And I think that's a way to explain most of this film. However, I could see this years from now being considered kind of a cult classic just because of how strange it is. I don't know.
What would you give Drive Away Dolls?
2.5.
I think I'm being kind in saying 2 out of 5. I did not care for this thing. Anything else?
No.
Join us on Patreon and listen to our podcast. Bye.